And let me start by saying that there are three major challenges facing the conservative movement. There are three major challenges facing the conservative movement. And if we don't find an answer to these three challenges, we are toast. We are toast. Challenge number one, we must find a way how to defeat the vile and the malicious attacks of the liberal left propaganda machine. They call us a racist, they call us a sellout. We go into our conservative closets. We've got to find a way how to win that propaganda battle. Secondly, we must find a way how to inspire more blacks, more Latinos, more women, and young people to join the ranks of the conservative movement. We got to do that. And thirdly, we must find a way how to energize the conservative base. Governor Romney received less votes from conservative than Senator McCain.
But he's not a conservative.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And the point is that the most important election in our history, we could not defeat a failing president. Couldn't do it. So we got to energize the conservative base.
Well, they control the ballot box.
Here's what we got to do. Here's what we got to do. All the things you're saying are true. Well, this is a center-right nation. This is a center-right nation. So if it's a center-right nation, why are we having such a difficult time inspiring people to join the ranks of our movement? We're losing the propaganda battle. We're losing the propaganda battle. So what happens is, when we get out here and try to engage, we've already been discredited, so when we get out here, our message falls on deaf ears. Most folks are conservative at heart. There's no excuse why we can't have this party of ours and this movement of ours be more powerful than it is. We have to learn how to win this propaganda battle and save our nation and preserve liberty. Now, when I was in the main ballroom area, the main assembly area for this summit, as I looked across the front of that stage there, I saw a portrait, a painting of Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln. Then they had, who was next? Benjamin Franklin. Then they had Lady Liberty. Then they had George Washington. They had Ronald Reagan. You know, over the corner somewhere they had, I think it's Churchill. There's a portrait missing. There's a portrait missing. And that's Frederick Douglass. If we're going to have a discussion about how we can be successful in defending the Constitution and defending liberty, Frederick Douglass has to be in that discussion. If not, it will not work. Why? What the left will do, they'll play the race card. Douglass defeats the race card. They'll play the class warfare attacks on us. I'm going to share with you how Douglass defeats that. Here's what you're going to learn. Let me share this with you, kind of get you going here this morning. Don't leave when I say this. The political insight of Frederick Douglass is more important than the political insights of the founding fathers. Think about that while I give me a sip of water. Let me say it again so you don't think I say something differently. The political insight of Frederick Douglass is more important than the political insights of the founding fathers. Before I explain that, let me give you a little 2-minute class on Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was born in 1818 in Maryland. He was born below poverty. See, when you're born into poverty, at least you own your own body. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery. He was born below poverty. Herman Cain, Dr. Ben Carson, they were born into poverty. Douglass was born below poverty. Never owned a pair of shoes until he was 8 years old. Never slept in bed until the age of 10. He was homeschooled, self-taught, 0 days of formal schooling. Never been to school in his life. That's pretty impressive because at that time in history, 90% of black Americans could not read or write. Harriet Tubman, for example, and Sojourner Truth were illiterate. Douglass learned how to read and write while he was a slave on a plantation. Later in life, he wrote 3 autobiographies. He didn't have a ghostwriter. He was a slave for the first 20 years of his life. The first 20 years of his life, he was a slave. Slave master took care of his health care. Slave master provided him clothing, shelter, and food. If Governor Rumley was here, he'd probably say that Frederick Douglass was a 47%. But the story does not end there. Douglass escaped from slavery in 1838. He escaped from slavery. What did he escape from? He escaped from slave master entitlements. He wanted to die, give a right for life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. Frederick Douglass was an advisor to 5 Republican presidents. 5. Abraham Lincoln, James Garfield, Rutherford Hayes, Benjamin Harrison, and Ulysses S. Grant. That's not bad for an ex-slave. Frederick Douglass was a capitalist. He was a capitalist. He was a free market entrepreneur. He wrote 3 books that were bestsellers. He was a lecturer on the anti-slavery circuit. He was hired by William Lloyd Garrison. He owned several newspaper companies. Trivia question for you. Frederick Douglass passed away in 1895 at the age of 77 as a result of a heart attack. How much money in savings do you think Douglass had amassed at the time of his death? How much money in savings do you think this man was a slave for the first 20 years of his life, never been to school? How much money in savings? Don't give me the inflation dollars. I'll get into it in a minute. But back then, how much money in savings do you think this man had amassed at the time of his death? Who was 47%?
100%, 100,000.
100,000?
Million.
A million? One more guess.
65,000.
65,000? $300,000. $300,000 back then is more than $10 million today. So Frederick Douglass was a 47% who became a 1%.
There you go, bro.
Now, why do I say that Frederick Douglass' political insight is more important than the political insights of the Founding Fathers? The Founding Fathers gave us 2 magnificent documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Right? Some of the Founding Fathers owned slaves. Upon the ratification of the Constitution, they did not free their slaves. They waited till after they died to free their slaves. You follow me so far? So their view of liberty is somewhat tainted. You agree with me? Because on an individual level, they could free their slaves. Frederick Douglass did not own any slaves. Frederick Douglass was a slave. And in his writings, he affirms the Constitution and he affirms the Founding Fathers. The left can't handle that. Douglass said on one occasion, he said, the Constitution reads, we the people. It does not say we the white people. Douglass went on to say, if black folks are people, then they ought to be included as benefactors of this Constitution. Douglass concluded by saying the problem is not with the Constitution. The problem is in the application of the Constitution. Thank God that we have a literary legacy of the writings of Frederick Douglass to refute the lies and propaganda of the left. That's why he can't be reversed. We cannot leave him out of that discussion. Now, let me share with you this Frederick Douglass Republican methodology God has given me. I am a conservative, but that is not how I describe myself politically. I am a Frederick Douglass Republican. So when I say that, it gives you a glimpse into my political psyche, that I believe in the 4 life empowering values of Frederick Douglass. Number 1, respect for the U.S. Constitution. Number 2, respect for life. Number 3, I believe in limited government. And number 4, I believe in personal responsibility. So to become a Frederick Douglass Republican is not based on your ethnicity or your color. It's based on your adherence to those 4 life and prime values of Douglass. Let me quickly dispel 3 myths about this Frederick Douglass Republican methodology, this movement, and this mantra that God has given me. Myth number 1, the Frederick Douglass Republican movement, it is not a black membership organization. It's not about color, it's about values. Anybody can become a Frederick Douglass Republican based on your adherence to those 4 conservative values. Because why? Frederick Douglass is, I always use him in the present tense, so you got to excuse me for that. But he's the quintessential constitutional conservative is Frederick Douglass. As a matter of fact, Frederick Douglass is the quintessential American dream story. It's Frederick Douglass. A man who started life at 0 and ended his life at the highest. He started below poverty and ended his life in prosperity. He was a slave in his life as a statesman. The beautiful thing about Douglass is this. I don't care what victimization category the left's going to put people in. You cannot out-victimize Douglass. You cannot victimize him. Myth number two. The Frederick Douglass Republican movement, the methodology, is not about how to share conservatism with black folks or minorities. It's broader than that. It's how to share the life-empowering message of the conservative philosophy to all Americans. Douglass is that comprehensive. When you take a look at the 4 major voting blocks that we did poorly in, blacks, Latino, women, and young people, Douglass' life, his story resonates with those 4 groups. Let me tell you how. With blacks, Frederick Douglass is the grandfather of the Civil Rights Movement. Dr. King is the father of the Civil Rights Movement. It all started with Douglass. Latinos. Douglass, in 1868, he was asked to comment on Chinese immigration. Douglass supported immigration. He said, for humanitarian reasons, let them come, because the Chinese were being brought to work on the railroad. He said, let them come. This is the best country in the history of the world. In a speech he gave called Our Composite Nationality, Douglass, in that speech, he also said there's a process that must be followed. He said, number 1, and I quote, they must bow to the same law, end of quote. Bow is a form of respect, respect with the law. Douglass said, 2, they must speak the same language, end of quote. Douglass believed in assimilation. Then Douglass said, number 3, they must understand the duties of citizenship in this country. The first duty of citizenship is to obey the law and to value the importance of our Constitution. This is what Douglass said. How does Douglass resonate with women? The first ever Women's Rights Convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. Susan B. Anthony was there. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was there. Sojourner Truth was there. About 200 women were there. 32 men were also there. Only 1 man was invited to speak. Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was affectionately referred to as a women's rights man. How does he resonate with young people? Well, for the first 20 years of his life, in his youth, he was a slave. While he was a slave, he put an action plan together that prepared him for liberty. He learned how to read and write while he was on the system. He maximized educational opportunities. That's a story worth emulating. So we should not envy wealth creation. For success, we got to emulate it. Douglass is that answer. The last myth is this, about this Frederick Douglass Republican methodology in this movement. I want you to stop believing the lie that as a white conservative, that you cannot engage someone of different ethnicities or the black community, Latino community. Stop believing that lie. You can, but you got to be trained in something that works. And that's the Frederick Douglass Liberty Messenger melody, or the Frederick Douglass Liberty Messenger Republican methodology. It works. But I've been doing it for the past 4 years. I have witnessed some of the most entrenched liberal Democrats change how they vote. Blacks, Why include it when they hear this message? But you have to be trained. You have to be trained. You can do this. So with this methodology, what we're doing, we're teaching conservatives how to engage, how to talk to your friends, your family members, and your fellow citizens about your conservative values without the fear of somebody calling you a racist or a sellout. And at the same time, you inspire them to join the race of your movement. Let me ask you a question. Who established a diversity outreach program that is still having a major impact in this world? Who established a diversity outreach program or a diversity inclusion program that is still having a major impact in this world? It was Jehovah God. When he commissioned Paul now to take the gospel to the Gentiles. Wait a minute. Paul was a Jew by ethnicity. He was commissioned to take the gospel of people of different races, ethnicities, the Gentiles. Paul was trained by Gamaliel. Now, the conservative movement, what are we trying to do? We're trying to share the life-empowering message of the conservative philosophy to people of different races, ethnicities. Because when we don't, we're history. Paul did it. Paul was trained. We can do it. You have to be trained. I had to be trained. I didn't get this thing right 4 or 5 years ago. But now in my house, around Thanksgiving time, things are different now. I don't have to get up and go sit at the tiny table anymore. I'm trying to raise some political wins for your family. We will win. I read the last chapter of the book. We will win. The question is, what's going to be the strategy to unify us? It's Frederick Douglass. Before there was Reagan, there was Douglass. Because of Douglass, there was a Cecil Lincoln. Before there was a Republican Party, there was Douglass. Thank God has given us a Frederick Douglass for a time like this in our history. I don't have time to get in detail into the methodology, but I want to do it this way with you. And I'm not here to hawk my book, but I'm here to tell you what works. If you can flip your parents and all your brothers, I'm telling you, this methodology is barbershop tested and beauty shop tested.
There you go, bro.
Give you an example. And when God gave me this message and he perfected this message in me, I sat down and I tried it on my brother first, who voted for Obama the first time, a pastor of almost 30 years. I sat him down for 6 months and said, read this on Douglass, read this on Douglass. And I said, here's how you handle the challenges. So one morning we got up, we live in Birmingham, Alabama. I said, let's go to Atlanta. He didn't know what I was doing. I said, get up, let's go to Atlanta. And I put one of my t-shirts on him. We have a t-shirt that has on it 3 big bold letters, FDR. It's not who you think Frederick Douglass Republic. So we went to Atlanta. Went to a neighborhood that I'd never been in. He'd never been in. Pulled up from a black barbershop. I said, get out. I said, get out, go get your haircut. He got a lot more hair than what I had. I said, get out, go get your haircut. He said, what? I said, you got to have faith that what I'm teaching you works. I got to put you in the belly of the beast. I got to do it. I said, get out, I'll be back in 2 hours. I pulled off, and he's walking into the barbershop. You see the movie Green Mile, Dead Man Walking? I'm sure that's how he felt. But when he went inside, he sat down. He said 13 men were there. Now, this is a black barbershop now. When they talk about sports, politics, if you're not careful, they talk about your mom. So he goes in, he has a seat. Within 5 minutes of sitting down, 2 men said to him in unison, are you a Republican? He stood up and said, no, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. There's a difference between the two. The Republican Party today does not resemble the party of Frederick Douglass when it was the defender of the Constitution. We got to have the Republican Party get back or recapture its political distinction. Make a long story short, he was in that barbershop for 40 minutes, engaging, teaching, talking about Douglass, talking about conservative values. Because he made them understand, I'm not a George Wallace type conservative. I'm a Frederick Douglass type conservative. He went back 2 months ago and did a book signing out at that barbershop. You can do this. I mentioned earlier, you better put me on the clock. What time is it? What? Oh, we're good. I got 10 minutes. I got to make sure I hit my own points here. I mentioned earlier, I don't refer to myself as a black conservative. I am one, but that's not how I refer to myself. Because here's what you got to understand in terms of propaganda about it. The word conservative, the name Tea Party, the name Republican Party, even the word Constitution has a negative connotation. We're losing the propaganda about it. So if you call yourself a black conservative, you might call yourself a black racist. You call yourself a Christian conservative, you might call yourself a Christian racist. A Reagan conservative, you call yourself a Reagan racist. If you call yourself a constitutional conservative, you call yourself a racist racist. We're losing the propaganda about it. Because don't forget now, it was conservative Democrats who did everything they could do to block civil rights legislation. They wrote the Jim Crow laws. Their definition of conservatism was this, that they wanted to hold on and secure the doctrine of their racist fathers. As independents and Republicans, our definition is different. We want to hold on to the values of the founding fathers. So when you're engaging, I'm not saying you don't use the word conservative, but I'm here to tell you, you've got to make sure you define that word first before you use it.
You're right.
If not, you'll see you as a George Wallace Bull kind of like conservative, and your message will never connect with them. So the wall is up. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. I wrote a book. The book's entitled Frederick Douglass Republicans, the movement now to reignite America's passion for liberty. America's passion for liberty. This is an action handbook for conservatives. It gives you the information you need so you can engage. I take those 4 life empowering values of Douglass. Respect for the Constitution. I give you 5 quotes from Douglass. Respect for life. 5 things Douglass said about life. The belief in limited government. What did Douglass say about limited government? And the last one is personal responsibility. The 5 quotes from Douglass, what he said about personal responsibility. And there's some other aspects in the book where it talks about Douglass on wealth creation versus wealth redistribution. Douglass' view on entitlements. It gives you the information you need so you can engage. The book is hot, it's selling. But when I get out here and start talking to people who bought the book, I find out they're not engaging. The purpose is to take this information and engage. So I found out was the reason why they're not engaged because they didn't have the confidence. So a guy sent me down and wrote a companion guide to the book. The companion guide is called The Most Asked Challenges. Here's how God sent me down to write this. When you study the ministry of Jesus Christ, do you recall how sometimes the scribes and the Pharisees would sometimes try to trap him, to get him to say something damaging so they can discredit him? That's what they do to us. They try to trap us so they can call us a racist, so they can call us a sellout. So then when we try to engage a message fall on their ears and their masters of it. But the Pharisees and the scribes now did not realize that Christ was a subject matter expert. And they did not realize he had the gift of taking their challenges. He turned it around. He made it a teachable moment and inspired many of them to join the racist movement. That's what we must do. So in this companion guide, I identified the 12 most asked challenges that conservatives face. How you take those challenges, you turn around and make a teachable moment. Let me give you a couple examples. Before you met me, you are here engaging at the local level, which we must do. And somebody asks you, are you a conservative? What would you say? You said, yes, you just lost. You just lost. Think about it now. When you study Christ's ministry, he never responded to a challenge by saying yes or no. He said, it is written. I tell you the truth, which means that he knew his history. And sometimes he will respond with a question to the question. KCarl, are you a conservative? I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, or if you need a nonpartisan expression, I'm a Frederick Douglass Liberty Messenger. And I believe in the 4 life empowering values of Frederick Douglass. Respect for the U.S. Constitution, respect for life. I believe in limited government, and I believe in personal responsibility. This is a center-right nation, so you got to ask them a question. Do you share those life empowering values of Douglass? Most folks are going to say yes. You respond by saying, well, guess what? That makes you a conservative, but you can't leave them there because of the propaganda battle. Guess what? That makes you a conservative. Oh, better still, that makes you a Frederick Douglass Republican or a Frederick Douglass Liberty Messenger, and that's the hook. That's the hook. Before you met me, you're out there engaged, somebody asked you, are you a Republican? What would you say? Yeah. You just lost. Your message will never fall. If I hear through the media that white conservatives are racist, Tea Party activists are racist, and you come to me and you never, and you keep using that word conservative, why would I listen to you? You can give me all the facts and truth you want. Why would I listen to a racist? KCarl, you're a conservative. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. I believe it or like the power magazine of Frederick Douglass. Or KCarl, you're a Republican. I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican. That's not the same thing as Republican. And you get into that pattern. Here's what I learned over the past 5 years of doing this. This whole Frederick Douglass Republican methodology is more powerful when you engage in it and execute it than when I do it as a black American. All we hear through the media is what? White conservatives are racist. Tea Party activists are racist. They have no redemptive quality in their life. They'll always be racist. That's what they say. Now, if you're a liberal, you're pure pristine, you can't see it. But if you're a conservative, you're inherently racist. Then you have a conservative saying, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, and I hold Frederick Douglass in high esteem. Oh, now you're driving the narrative. Now you're framing the debate, because that oxymoron, Frederick Douglass Republican, that's an oxymoron. Douglass, an icon of liberty, because it was a propaganda battle, Republican, an icon of slavery. Now, most folks don't know the substance of Douglass. But unlike the Christ, we have to carefully study to show ourselves approved, to know our history. When we know the substance of Douglass and somebody else doesn't know, you're driving the narrative, you're framing the debate, and you're inspiring them to join the rest of your movement. It's bulletproof. Once the Frederick Douglass Republican message gets on a national level, liberals will start jumping out of windows and go back to France. So I'm here to tell you, the message I'm going to leave with you is this. Oh, by the way, I do have some books here. They come as a set. The books are free. What you're paying for is the autograph inside the book. That's $20. I'm a proud capitalist. We're going to save this nation. We're going to save it. But Douglass is the answer. He trumps the race card, speaks to class warfare attacks. You can do this. And let me close off by saying, I'm traveling the country. And what we're doing, we're going to every part of the United States, all 57 states. And what we're doing, we're starting Liberty brush fires with this message. I'm going out, I am intentionally preaching to the choir. I'm doing this on purpose because the choir has to be empowered. The conservative choir has to be trained. The conservative choir has to be equipped how to go out and get new choir members. Her conservative choir needs a new song to sing. The one we sing ain't working. Don't wait for the cavalry to come. We're all the cavalry. And the song we sing has to be the Frederick Douglass Republican melody, the Frederick Douglass Liberty Messenger melody. That's the message. The answer is Douglass. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.